Star Wars is one of those things like TV itself where I don't remember having not seen it.
Oh.
Like, I can't remember the first time I saw Star Wars. I was just aware from a very young age of things like the pop-up books and Yoda and, you know, all the neat stuff that, you know, kids enjoy about Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. So what was your favorite thing about Star Wars?
My favorite thing is the music. You know, if you ask me, I think John Williams' score and also Ben Burtt's sound design, both of them working together, like the sonic palette of the Star Wars films is, I think, its greatest strength.
It is great. It definitely, you catch yourself getting so drawn into the emotion of the music.
Mm-hmm.
But my favorite thing as a little girl were the Ewoks.
Oh yeah, so was Return of the Jedi the first one that you saw?
It might have been, yeah. But I do think now, as I've gotten older and I've looked back on it more,
Mm-hmm.
I definitely appreciate just what a tough woman Princess Leia is. And this was developed back in the 70s where there weren't a lot of strong women, definitely in the movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciate that. And just this resistance. I feel like it's part of something that's made me a rebel my whole life.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb and say I don't just enjoy episodes 4, 5, and 6. I also, look, at the time when they came out, I was just as disappointed as everyone by episodes 1, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to them, the last time I watched them was 2017 after The Last Jedi came out, and I went back and I watched 1, 2, 3 in a row,
Mm-hmm.
and I love them now. I think they're great. I've completely changed my mind on the prequels.
Well, I haven't. I think that they're garbage.
Fair enough, but there's certain technical problems with especially episodes 2 and 3 because they were filmed at fairly low digital resolutions by modern standards, so we'll never get like a true 4K for those because they weren't on film. They're not 35 millimeter.
Now, is that just because Disney likes to kind of chintz out when it comes to the production value?
Well, we got to blame George Lucas and Fox for these because with episode 2 and 3, Attack of the Clones and The Revenge of the Sith, that Attack of the Clones, I believe, was like the first movie ever that was like, mainstream film that was shot on digital. And he experimented a little bit, like episode 1, The Phantom Menace. One of those scenes, like the scene where Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon Jinn is talking to young Anakin about midichlorians. I believe that was an early attempt on digital, just to see if it worked.
Huh.
But that's all to say that I personally appreciate and enjoy, all the work George Lucas and his team put into creating the Star Wars universe over decades. But of course we know, since 2012, Disney has owned the copyrights and trademarks on all of this material. And honey, what do you think? How have they done so far?
Well, I'm not a big fan of what they've done so far. So far, I'm not very impressed. They had a huge fan base already built into this. They had a whole plethora of fan fiction, of different stories, different, family lines. They had family trees. They had everything sitting there for them. And they kind of went against everything.
Mm-hmm. So, what you say fan fiction, they had what was called the expanded universe of novels and tabletop games and comics and video games that all, in a sense, counted. If George Lucas put out another movie and contradicted something that was in one of the books, it wouldn't count anymore. But for the most part, it's Han and Leia got married, they had kids, the kids trained as Jedis.
Right.
Unfortunately, Chewbacca was killed because a moon fell on him, I think is what happened.
Aww.
And so some things like that, Disney wanted to go in a different direction, so they bend it. They tossed everything into the trash, and they called it Star Wars Legends, which I think was a bad start for the existing fan base of saying everything you cared about that wasn't those 6 movies doesn't count anymore.
Yeah.
So I think that upset people to start with. And then also George Lucas had treatments. He had outlines for where he would go with episodes 7, 8, and 9. And they bend that too. They tossed it. And we've read theories about why they would get rid of the George Lucas stuff or try to minimize that as much as possible. You know why that is?
It's about that money.
It's about the money. There's theories out there that George Lucas in the contract when he sold to Disney. Check the channel Midnight's Edge for this. They did a really good video about this on YouTube. That the theory would be if George Lucas, if it was something that he or his team created, that he would get more royalties for it. Mm-hmm. So like say if it's a Skywalker or something, the Jedi Order or a Darth Maul or Darth Vader or whatever, then that's going to be more royalties towards George Lucas. Mm-hmm. Whereas if they create something new like Kylo Ren and the Darth style, but they don't call it Darth, then they keep more of the money and don't have to pay Lucas.
And that's not to say that they're not making money off the legacy characters. They're just not making as much. Mm-hmm. So they were looking at, as a business, how do we make the most out of this copyright that we own? Right.
Now, whether that's true or not, a lot of the story decisions from the last couple movies make more sense when you look at it through that lens of the question of why does Han Solo have to die in Episode 7? Well, the big reason is probably that's the only way that he could get Harrison Ford to agree to do it.
Exactly.
Is if you kill him.
Yeah.
But Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker, he's the only guy that wants to play along. He's the only guy that wants to be there. Mm-hmm. He loves Star Wars more than anybody, but they got rid of him as soon as possible. And that doesn't make sense unless, again, you're trying to minimize the Lucas presence and build up the new Disney character presence.
Right. And that's also kind of why I think that they didn't say outright Rey is Luke's daughter or Han and Leia's daughter, because they need her to not be connected to all of the George Lucas characters.
Right. We've been disappointed at varying levels. I think we've seen them all together, right? We've seen Episode 7, we've seen Episode 8, we've seen Rogue One, we've seen Han Solo, and all of them we left thinking could have been better.
Could have been a lot better.
Could have been a lot better. But we're on the hook again because what's in the news this week, honey?
We've got a lot of stuff coming from Disney. We've got, in December, coming up is going to be the Star Wars Episode 9. Mm-hmm. And then the new Disney Channel, what is it called?
Disney Plus Streaming.
Disney Plus Streaming is going to have 2 shows.
Yeah.
There's going to be the Obi-Wan show. And I hope they call it that.
Yeah, the Obi-Wan show featuring Obi-Wan.
And there was some really exciting news about who's playing Obi-Wan.
Well, Ewan McGregor is back. And even people like you who aren't super big fans of the prequels, I think, realize that he is a very enjoyable part of those movies. And if you ever look at the behind-the-scenes stuff, you can tell he's having a lot of fun, even with, just green screen behind him.
Yeah, he took it very seriously.
And then the third thing they're doing is not quite a Boba Fett, not quite a Jango Fett TV show. It's called The Mandalorian, and it's about a bounty hunter from the planet of Mandalore, which is the planet where Jango Fett originally came from. But, going back to that theory of why are there any changes whatsoever, I think they made some changes here, again, to make the Mandalorian more distinct from the original design and the original characters. So the big change, as I see it with the Mandalorian, is they've taken away his radio antenna. So he doesn't have that part, and he also doesn't have the famous jetpack or, I think, cape that he had in the original design.
So he got an upgrade.
Yeah, you might say that. You might say he got an upgrade. But he's still got the very famous T shape in the visor, which I think, especially for kids in 1980 when they saw The Empire Strikes Back, this character was cool from the jump.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, he fell into the Sarlacc at the beginning of The Return of the Jedi. Not very cool. But expanded universe, he actually survived. He climbed out and lived to bounty hunt again.
Well, and there were G.I. Joe, actually Cobra characters that looked a lot like this guy.
Yeah, Cobra Commander has that same sort of, helmet visor thing. So, and a lot of, comic book artists have designed similar things. And I think, it's going back to a conversation I believe Todd McFarlane and Rob Liefeld had about Todd was telling Rob that it was easy to draw Spider-Man because you don't have to draw the whole face. And Rob's like, I need a character like that. So he designed Deadpool. And also, we know Rob's a big fan of Boba Fett to start with. But the original designer, I want to give credit to that, the original designer for Boba Fett back in the day was Joe Johnston, who people may also remember from such hit films as Jurassic Park 3, Captain America, The First Avenger, Jumanji, the first one, and, a bunch of other fun stuff. Oh, The Rocketeer. Oh, yeah. So he went on to great success after doing, early design work for Star Wars. But, you know, all that aside, what are you particularly looking forward to with this new show, The Mandalorian?
Well, one of my friends sent me a message with basically like a long list of some pretty amazing actors that have signed up to be a part, and actually one of my favorite comedians, Bill Burr.
You think Bill Burr's just gonna like riff on The Mandalorian, just make fun of him the whole time?
Well, he has to, because he's literally made fun of Star Wars and Star Wars fans, so...
I think, well, I don't know his exact age, but I have to imagine he falls into that demographic of, like, really cares about Star Wars. I could be completely wrong about that. He may have been, like, you know, because even if you were, like, probably 14 or 15 when the first Star Wars came out, you might have been at that age where you're like, oh, I'm too cool for this. Like, this isn't my thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't say really cares, but maybe really has an opinion.
Yes, for sure. But there is, you know, speaking of the cast list, to me there's a conspicuous absence. And that is that there is, as far as I know, no Tamura Morrison in this new Mandalorian show. And he is, of course, the actor who portrayed Jango Fett in Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Although, if you remember what happened to him, Jedi cuts off his head in the battle at the end. And it turns out his son was a clone of himself who grew up to be Boba Fett and carried around the helmet and became, you know, a bounty hunter. But again, it might all just go back to why not involve him? Why not call him something Fett, Boba, Jango, whatever. Jango, you know, could be because Disney's trying to minimize as much as they can the connection to the characters created and developed by George Lucas, Joe Johnston, and the rest of the team. But that's idle speculation, so...
And I really think that that's a very dangerous place to go. Like, in a different video that we did, you were talking about your level of interest of different things that are on the horizon as far as things that are getting produced right now. And basically, your level of excitement went right along with the creator's involvement in it.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a big message to, I hope Disney's going to pay attention to, that if you don't have the creator involved, and at the very least have their blessing, which they do, but if you don't have him involved, you're going to miss a lot of the things that made this special. Yeah,
taking the billions of dollars is kind of like saying you have my blessing, you know, from George Lucas's point of view. But unfortunately, we didn't get the episode 7 that he intended, and you know what we got was certainly could have been better. Although, you know, I'll be fair, there were things I liked in episode 7. I liked some of the jokes. I really liked it when, I forget who said, like, Finn maybe says, "We'll just use the Force," and then Han Solo's like, "That's not how the Force works." I love that line.
And when they went into the garbage chute.
He's like, "I've been here before. This is giving me bad memories."
I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was just funny, the irony of it all.
Yeah.
And then they did do a few nods to, like, when Kylo Ren killed his father falls to his death, just like when Darth Vader fell to his death. Yeah. So, you know, they do a few things that are kind of just, like, very easy to throw a little, like, nod to the past, but I don't think they're doing enough to really keep the current Star Wars fans, this big network of people that's already built in, and they're trying to focus so hard on getting the new people, the kids, but guess what? If the parents don't like it, the kids aren't going to go to it.
That's, you know, there's something to that as well, but as long as, I mean, if the kids like it, that's great, but I don't know. Either way, I won't say optimistic, but I will check out. I mean, we're going to go see episode 9.
Yeah,
there's
definitely.
no way around it. And we'll probably check out The Mandalorian, and we'll definitely watch the Obi-Wan show. I mean, for Ewan McGregor, if nothing else.
But here's the thing with, we're definitely going to go see it. When you've invested so much time of enjoying characters, you're going to watch it even if you think it's going to crash and burn. But I hope that that's not good enough for Disney. I hope that they're really trying to put out a good product.
Until next time, what can they do, honey?
Be sure to subscribe, like this video, and let us know why you like it in the comments below.
All right, and we'll see you next time. Artists out there, keep drawing.